Hi everyone, week 13 is in the books. Oh my gosh, 1,000 upsets it felt like today, right? We had top 10 teams lose. We had a bunch of teams in the middle lose. We had teams at the very edge lose. Big 12, SEC, Big 10, a ton of movement all around. We have our machine learning algorithm rankings right now and our website, rankingsrightnow.com, to go through all of the projected rankings for Tuesday's Week 14 rankings. So we just finished Week 13. We're going to go ahead and project out what the rankings are going to be from the playoff committee on Week 14. There's a couple of things that are really shocking, but that's what makes this fun. Let's go ahead and dive on in to where the predictive algorithm has these rankings going into next weekend. Okay, or on Tuesday, I should say. Here are the predicted rankings from the Rankings Right Now machine learning algorithm. This algorithm is trained on historical playoff committee voting patterns and projects out, based on those patterns, how the committee is going to vote. It's very accurate. There's some things that it could do a little bit better, could do a little bit worse on, but overall, it gets a really good picture. There are 5 or 6 major things that need to be addressed in this. Let's start at the very top. Ohio State beats Indiana. According to the rankings right now, Indiana is only going to drop 2 spots in the rankings. Do I think that SMU might jump them? Maybe. That seems to be a little bit more accurate just from a gut feeling perspective. But why only 2 spots? Well, you have to take into account everything that's happened. You have to think that, okay, SMU was at 13 going into this weekend. Boise State was at 12 going into the weekend. Georgia at 10. Tennessee at 11. When you have a 5th ranked team, right? At the beginning of the day, they were going to drop down even further, but an Alabama loss and an Ole Miss loss, you take the 7th-ranked team at Alabama, you take the 9th-ranked team, and you take them out. That gives a little bit of wiggle room for Indiana to stay relevant in those top-ranked teams. Now, did they get blown out by Ohio State? Yes. Is it kind of what we all expected? Yes. But at the end of the day, we're talking about rankings right now, right? So when you have some movement like Alabama and Ole Miss losing today, it gives a little bit of a cushion for those teams that are up top that lose, that they can drop, but not drop drastically. If Alabama and Ole Miss were to win, let's just play around with this in the what if simulation tool real quick. Let's say Ole Miss wins this game 28-24. And where is the Alabama game? Let's say Alabama doesn't get absolutely crushed by Oklahoma. Let's say they win, 20-17. Let's see where the rankings would have been if both those wins would have come out as expected. Now you have Indiana dropping all the way down to 9. Right? And we just talked about SMU and Indiana maybe switching. Maybe you want Georgia or Boise State ahead of Indiana, right? It makes them move a lot further down. You would have Alabama and Ole Miss at 6 and 7, but now 6 and 7 are gone. So it allows so much more movement up top for Indiana to really stay relevant. That's a crazy scenario. We can even talk, let's go ahead and just reset all the scores and go back to the original simulation. So we're back in tune with where the predicted rankings are. But to stay on par with what we were just talking about, you have Alabama and Ole Miss now at 12 and 13. I don't think the algorithm is being aggressive enough right here. You have Alabama who got creamed by Oklahoma. Oklahoma has not done anything this year to deserve this type of win. This is shocking to a lot of people. I don't think the algorithm is being aggressive enough here. So Alabama, that's their that's their 3rd loss. It's really hard to picture them at number 12 and still technically in the playoff. I don't think that anyone else really, assuming the group of 5 scenario, which a lot of people don't understand what that situation is. due to the kind of weirdness of the top four rankings. But I think Boise State gets that bye, if I'm not mistaken, which means that Arizona State might be the next team up for the group of five. No, but they're in a Big 12, so they're not a group of five. This is what I'm talking about. It's all over the place right now. This is going to be really, really interesting on where the playoff seedings look. But Alabama and Ole Miss still in contention for a playoff? I would be surprised by that. Here's the rebuttal, though. Are you going to let Clemson still be a 12-13 ranked team? Does South Carolina, who just snuck in at the very, who's been up and down all year, but they've been hot of lately? Arizona State wasn't ranked 2 weeks ago. Are they going to have a legitimate shot at being in the playoff? Yes. BYU loses today. They, as far as I'm concerned, unless they win that Big 12 championship, which I'm not, we have one more week to go before those championship games kind of get settled. But right now, Arizona State and BYU are projected to be the two top at the list for the Big 12, with Iowa State right there as well. CU is projected to fall 10 spots to Kansas. Kansas and Florida just playing season ruiners, which is fun if you're on that side, right? Those two fan bases must be going crazy right now. That's so much fun to be just ruining people's seasons. But man, I don't think anyone, especially 4 weeks ago with the whole head coach situation in Florida, and the way that Kansas really started the beginning of the year, I don't think anyone would have predicted that it would be Kansas and Florida to be causing this much chaos late in the year, right? It's, when it comes to rankings, we've talked about this before. It is who you played and when you played them. That's what matters, right? When you beat Florida State in week 2, you're going to get a lot of love. If you beat Florida State this year in week 12 or 13, no one's going to care. I'm very curious on with some of these losses, right? An Indiana loss to Ohio State earlier in the year, I think hurts them even worse. But you're losing to the number 2 ranked team, and you're supposed to, right? We learned a little bit, but we didn't learn a ton, right? When you have teams like Tennessee beating UTEP, right? Let's look for the Tennessee score. When they beat UTEP 56-0, we don't really learn anything. They were doing this at the beginning of the year, if you remember. Tennessee was just blowing out every team like 70-0, right? You play a team like UTEP, you're supposed to win by 60. So we didn't really learn anything. I don't see that Tennessee, the algorithm, and I don't see Tennessee moving up that much, if at all. So you have Tennessee beat Alabama. Okay, that makes sense. Georgia lost to Alabama, but Georgia doesn't have to worry about their third loss here. Georgia played UMass, right? You don't learn anything. So it's hard for them to move up. You're trying to learn things like SMU, right? SMU going on the road against Virginia and putting up big numbers and giving up very little. You learn something. Boise State, same thing. They struggled today. They really, really struggled. Against a Wyoming team that's been pathetic all year, right? We learned something, but a lot of teams ahead of them lost. So you get to move up for free. So that +3 looks really good, but it's not really because of an amazing win against Wyoming. It's because rankings are strange, and there was 2 spots that just opened up for free. So it's not, you win, you get to move up. That's not how this works, right? Tennessee and Georgia both win. Do they move up in the rankings? Maybe. If Boise State stays at 12, right, and Georgia and Tennessee, you both move up 1. That's not really a congratulations because you played a really weak schedule at the very end of the year. That's just because 2 teams ahead of you lost, and you open up that room to breathe. One team that really got hurt today was Army. That was Army's last chance to really prove that they should be in contention for that group of 5 spot, right? I don't see, you have Notre Dame. You finally have the chance to prove it. and it just didn't have it today, which is a bummer because I think that would have been a lot of fun. And let's see real quick using the what if simulation tool, if Army would have won that game. Let's say that would have been, I think that would have been a little bit of a low scoring game ish type of scenario. If we look and just reminders, let's say Army would have won that game 24-20. If you go ahead and run that what if simulation tool, that would have sent Notre Dame down to 12 and Army to 11. That would have been a massive shift in the rankings, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. So one of the other teams that I really wanted to address that also had everything in front of them was Colorado losing to Kansas. That hurt. I'm from Denver. We were rooting for CU. That one really stung. So I don't see, I think that 26 might be an aggressive drop according to the algorithm. I understand why that drop happened. Kansas State beat CU this year, so that rankings matchup looks right. You know, I think that makes a ton of sense. Texas A&M with a loss to Auburn, who's been okay as of late, did not really meet a lot of expectations where the season started. They're projected to drop down 6 spots. That makes a little bit of sense to me. Missouri somehow still hanging in the 20s there. So maybe Texas A&M stays ahead of UNLV and Tulane. But as of right now, I don't see that, you know, their season's essentially over. These SEC schools are just knocking each other out, right? A really bad day for the SEC when you have Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M all taking a bad L. You know, they're not none of these teams lost to very high quality teams, right? You have Alabama losing to Oklahoma. Texas didn't even really look great against Kentucky for most of the game. Ole Miss losing to Florida. Florida, got their quarterback the last couple of weeks. They're playing great ball, but overall hasn't been a successful year. And, you know, you have South Carolina playing Wofford, so they kind of just get to waltz. That's kind of crazy. That's really crazy. If you think of like Clemson, South Carolina, having to play very, very weak opponents, and now Texas A&M has to face Auburn, who's playing good ball, who's a high quality SEC school, you know, throughout history. You know, Texas A&M loses in like quadruple overtime, and now they're going to get heavily punished, and South Carolina and Clemson kind of just get to waltz in. Right? Clemson had blown their chance against Louisville, it had felt like. And now, Louisville's not even on the map. Clemson's back in and knocking on the door of a top 12 ranking. So, this is just been an enormous shift, right? There's a lot of different places that you could argue where teams should be ranked based off of three loss SEC schools versus, you know, ACC runner-ups, Big 12 contenders, right? You don't even get anywhere close to the Big 12 until you get to the 16, 17, 18 area, right? Kansas State and CU were in that area a couple weeks ago, and now they're out. So now you have Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State really in that packed area. Tulane might be your group of 5, best case scenario at 19 now. UNLV, same situation. A lot of these SEC schools have just been knocking each other out so much. And now you're, this I found very interesting. Penn State is projected to move up above Texas. Am I confident that's going to be the case? No. Can I understand maybe why? Well, let's go ahead and look at the situation that they had, right? Penn State wins by 1 on the road against Minnesota. If we take a look at where Minnesota is, and we'll do that here in a second, versus where Texas and Kentucky, Texas beat Kentucky by, 17? Does a 1-point win on the road against Minnesota beat a 17-point win at home against Kentucky? Well, if we take a look at all of the teams here, and let's find where Kentucky is. Kentucky was ranked 100 going into today's ranking. They dropped 1 spot, right? They were expected to lose, right? Not a lot that we learned about that game, right? So Kentucky was ranked 101 going into this game. Where was Minnesota? Minnesota was ranked 39. So does a 1-point win against the 39th ranked team, according to the algorithm, beat a 17-point win against the 100th ranked team in the country? That is what the model is thinking in the scenario. That's why the model is predicting Penn State above Texas. So here are your, let me just, yeah, we're all set. We're all good to go, right? So some teams that are just hovering outside of the top 25 according to the algorithm: Baylor, Louisville, LSU, Syracuse, Texas Tech, Duke. Okay? And now then you have your UW, Washington, Michigan. Like, it makes sense. So, right here with the projected outcomes for week 14, the areas that I'm really interested in are 3 and 4 right here. How far does Indiana drop? How far up does SMU and Boise State move up with the pack? Do Georgia and Tennessee move up with the pack? Where does Alabama and Ole Miss fall, along with Clemson and South Carolina and ASU, right? There are, an insane day of football to really be evaluating all these different types of things. So at the end of the day, this algorithm is based on historical data. The goal of the algorithm is to try and give you, the fans, an insight into what is going to happen before anyone else. It's like telling you a quick little secret of this is where people are leaning, right? The idea is every year, every week to get this more and more accurate, makes it more fun in real time, and follow along with rankings right now. You can for those of you who were on the page today, all of these get updated in real time. You can see the games that have been completed, when they were in progress, what's scheduled, and what the scores are projected to be, right? All of these are based on real-time predictions to try and have as much fun as possible and add a new element to college football rankings. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, subscribe to our weekly analysis newsletter, everything that you could possibly want, all brought in for college football rankings. But this has been so much fun. We're going to check in on Tuesday and see where everything was, how the rankings shaped up with the predicted algorithm, and move on to our final regular season week before the conference championship. So should be a ton of fun. Thank you for following along. Thank you for joining. We'll see you on Tuesday.